Being in Love and iAMradio's mini-series, because God said. iAMradio broadcast is a series of presentations where I share some of the discoveries that I've made in applying mindfulness for myself and facilitating that for clients. And, while we're getting here, let's just relax for a second. Hey, guys. So what I'm talking about today, oh man, lots of peeps, is Victor, what up? I miss you. Your little baby is so cute. So is your mom. Okay, so what I hoped to share today in about 10 to 20 minutes is some information that you can use in implementing some of the things that you might be reading other places. So, it's pretty hot, right? The present is pretty hot right now. And so you might be reading or have read The Power of Now, or maybe you're listening to podcasts that talk about mindfulness, meditation, etc. And the concepts are real cool, and you can tell they probably make a difference, but how do you take them and live them? Hello. And I would love crowd involvement. So if you have questions or personal examples or sticking points, holler and I'll do my best to get to them. So what is being present? I think it's easiest to discuss when you look at what it's not. And when we're talking about anything, particularly stuff at this level, words can't do it. It doesn't fit in words. When you call something by name, you exclude everything else. You say, this is a marker. And by calling this out with a word and a name and thinking about it using the word or the name, you separate the marker from everything else. But nothing is separate. It's all connected, So it's easier to see with personal examples, like when we look at people, when you're exploring your personal relationships and you start to think about things and you use words for what you're thinking about them, you can only think about them separate from their environment and in an abstract way that pretty much fucks you over in your ability to actually comprehend what's happening and do something with it that you're trying to do. So that's to say, when I'm talking about stuff, I'm going to be trying to put stuff in words that doesn't fit in words. So it's kind of like putting these shorts on an elephant, he can cut no, but we're going to try. Okay, so what is being present? Let's look at what it's not. I wrote all these backwards, and I got all the letters right on that one. Not being present is having mental chatter that takes your attention away from your sense experience and your immediate environment and puts it on what's happening up here. What are you thinking about up there? Well, it could be anything. It could be about what is. It could be paying attention to does my shirt look okay? Hey, is their shirt okay? So it could be about things that are in that space, or it could be about anything. You could be thinking, oh man, I really fucked that up in 2003, or I hope that later we're having enchiladas. It could be anything. But essentially, you're here instead of here in your personal experience. When we're looking at the limits of thinking, actually I'm gonna put that aside, so we'll just keep it kind of simple today. So being present might mean that you don't have inner narration that is distracting your focus away from what is and putting it on something that is essentially imaginary. So thoughts are, as often as you're hearing them, as real as they seem. When you look at it, what are they? What is that? When you're focused up here, when your attention is on your thoughts, what is it? I haven't been in many lives. I was recommended to your page by someone. What goes on here? Thank you. Well, welcome, and thanks for asking. This is my first time back on a live in a little bit, and what I try to share are tips and perspectives to consider on your own journey. So I am of the mindset that everybody is their own expert, and when I'm up here sharing stuff, what I'm hoping to do is put things on tables, and if anything sparkles to you, you can pick it up, spin it around, try it on, see if it works for you. I seem bumming. I think I'm just nervous to be out here again, and I'll likely do this presentation another time. I'm a little rusty, but thank you for asking. Okay. So that's a great, thank you. Okay, so that's actually a great note. So let's see if I can make it happen real time. So there is agitation in my experience because I'm having it relative to expectations. I'm uncomfortable in that I have ideas about how this could or should go, which distracts me from the present. See how that is? So I talked about how thinking can do it, but thinking has lots of subtle layers. You'll hear thoughts, but you'll also have background thoughts that create the frame through which you're experiencing what is. So the frame that I'm experiencing what is like, I hope I do a good job. Hope I don't fuck this up, talk too long. Is that present? No. Ideally, I would allow myself, and once I get warmed up, I generally can, to hand over my vessel, my voice, my being to something that can move. It's almost like dancing, you give yourself over to the music and you're not worried about if it looks good or not, or if it makes sense or not. You're just allowing. So that is right now I'm comparing what is not being present to what is being present, so we can start to understand what the target is. Another way that you're not present is this, and this kind of feeds off of what I was just saying. I've got the same dude here. You can't tell because his face a little wider on here, but pretend they're the same. This is the version of him that he thinks he is, and this is the version that he is. I covered this a lot in my iAMradios. What's real cute about the version of you that you think that you are, it only includes what you're conscious of being. So I shared a post yesterday I wrote on ego, and ego is it mental health things? Yeah, it's like applied spirituality. Expectation often takes away the whole enjoyment of the experience for me. Yeah, making it fun for me regardless of the outcome makes me so happy. Something you helped me learn. Oh, I'm happy to hear that. Yeah, that's a great frame. So what Michael added is that when you are present or you're somewhere, one of the frames that you can use to allow yourself to be more present is to change it from one of like, am I getting it right? To how can I make this fun? And when you go from a narrow focus to an open-ended outcome like play, that allows for more presence because you're not looking for things, you're open to them, you're seeing them. And when we're looking at the version of who you think you are, versus who you are, you can only think about yourself with what you are conscious of being. When I'm using these words, please shout if any of them don't hit. Conscious to me in this context means you're aware of it. So I would be conscious of having brown hair. I would be conscious of feeling comfortable using vocabulary. I might not be conscious that when I'm in fight or flight, I'm not accessible emotionally. I might not. That was a true story. You don't know what you don't know. So if I had been describing myself, I wouldn't include what I wasn't conscious of being because I wasn't aware of it. And when you're working with people, and one of the things I hope to add overall to the conversation of consciousness, globally, is how to allow for someone else's unconscious behavior and to create a bridge of awareness where you help their conscious side meet their unconscious side. And unconscious, again, just basically means like you don't really know what you're doing. And when you're doing something that's harmful to yourself or harmful to someone else, you can pretty much put it under the umbrella of an unconscious behavior, because if someone was truly aware of what they were doing, they wouldn't do those things. And yet when you're in fear, it's almost like you go away and fear takes over and starts to make the decisions. They become they're a lower level. They're more reaction than responsive. Reactive than responsive. So when you start to work with other people and you notice that they're doing some kind of weird shit, rather than think like this is a person that does weird shit, allow that they are a rounder individual and they may not be aware that they do that. And when you afford that kind of grace to someone else, you also afford it to yourself. So at a subconscious level, it starts to make room for you to meet your own unconscious aspects, which is great, because then you stop causing yourself so many problems. So much of our experience at like a contemporary level is like, let me make this mess and then I'll clean it up. Let me make this mess and then I'll clean it up. And so things don't really progress or move forward because you're stuck in these like kind of not self-destructive loops, but let's say like not self-supportive loops. So when you start to allow for somebody else's unconscious behavior and like you see that it's not them as much as how they're expressing, then you're like, hey, maybe that's true for me. Maybe I shouldn't be ashamed of what I do when I'm not conscious. Maybe that's just a part of me I haven't claimed yet. Hey, buddy, come on. Can you see the questions that are being put into the question submission? Oh, questions from stories. I see the ones from the stories, from my stories from earlier. Is that what you mean? Okay, so back to, we're looking at being present, and I'm talking about things that can make you not present. And one of the things we talked about are expectations, how you think the moment should go, background chatter that could be about this or about, who the fuck knows what. And then there's also meaning. And meaning is another one that's very subtle. Almost all of these things happen. Michael, can you see them over there? Where, like, if so, where? So, kind of like I was saying that I don't have a voice inside of me that's narrating and saying something like, Shaylee, don't get this wrong. It just kind of is a frame of my experience that generates that sensation of nervousness. Similarly, you don't really hear, what do I want this to mean? It happens pretty instantaneously. It's like you walk outside, you see somebody doing something, your brain's like, I remember this, they're that, it means this, I'll do that. But fucked if you know. And when you do that, it's so convincing, you very rarely interrupt it and say like, is there another way to perceive this? When there's interpersonal conflict, generally it's a function of one of the parties being like, you did this and you must mean that. But they don't hear, you did this, you must mean that. They just hear, this is what they're doing. It kind of summarizes those things and generally applies an interpretation that's not it. For example, at a very basic level, you see this with like texting. Somebody gets a text and they are like, okay, I'll respond, and then their phone rings and they don't respond, and the other party's like, okay, it means blah, 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 and they run off with the meaning. All of that takes away from you being present. When you're walking into a room, even if it's a room you live in, even if it's a room you walk into all the time, begin to notice what you assume things are and what they mean. And let me see an example. It could be something like meaning about you. Let's say that you left dishes on the counter. You walk in and you think, I'm lazy, I need to get my shit together. Why, how come this must be why I'm not making money. Like, your head will go all those places. And in actuality, your personal record keeping is generally not that good. And so if that was the inner dialogue that you were having, likely it's an area that you've been working on, and you probably have been doing a pretty good job with it, and maybe just ran out early that day and didn't get to it. And so you take one example and you blow it out to mean all these things, and then you respond to the meaning, not the dishes on the counter. You're upset about what you think that means. And you could spiral pretty fast and pretty far with interpretations like that. So being present is noticing when you're running some different direction with a meaning, when you could just let it be that there are dishes on the counter. That is what's being present. It's wiping away all the what this means now, what this means later, what it could, and just doing the fucking dishes. That's what's being present. Okay, questions, thoughts, feelings, comments so far. Thanks for being here. Like I said, this is my first one out in a while, so I'm I gotta loosen up. Or I think that I do. This could be perfect. When I posted, yes, Richie, what is your question? I see a hand. Okay, so when I posted this today, being in love, what that means is being essentially present and in, let's say, allowance of the possibility that you are one with life. So being in love is being out of separation. Separation is when you think that there is something that's not you. And when we're looking at what is not you, we might look at that a different day, because that's a lot. There are two different ways to interpret that I would want to talk about right now. Okay, if you remember, holler back. Do you have ways you bring yourself back into the present when you realize your mind is somewhere else? Great question. Yes. Breathing. Until you actually have developed a relationship with your own breath, when someone's like, just breathe, bro, it's like, okay. But when you actually have developed, that practice, it is something. It really is something. And breathing, for me, means that I take control of my physiology. It's almost like I take my body and I hold me by the head and I pick me up and I put my body in a tank of sunset or something that's really calming or soothing, and I let my nervous system calibrate to that calming sensation. And as my body calms, as my physiology changes, then the mental chatter ceases. So when I'm teaching mindfulness, one of the examples that I use is one of those pinwheels, the rainbow pinwheels that you blow on or hold out the car window and they spin really fast. When your mind is moving really quickly, there's a lot of thought, a lot of agitation. It's like the pinwheel going really fast. If you start to think about the pinwheel, it just makes it move faster. Or if you try to think about what the pinwheel says is important, it just moves it faster. Usually a lot of agitation is just displaced energy. It's emotional energy that might be present that's pushed away, or old shit that's been pushed down. If you can make space to feel, then the wind that's spinning the pinwheel starts to go away and the thoughts drop off. So many of the thoughts that you have that you all chips buy right into, in different states, you wouldn't look twice at. You'd be like, shit, that's crazy. But going back to the idea of, some of your behaviors being unconscious, when you're in a fear state and when you're in a high state, you generally don't know you across those. So the high state you would not have the same thoughts as the low state you. Low state you is you in fear. High state you is you feeling pretty good, you being present. If you almost, it's like there's almost like a chop, and you forget this part of you when you're up here, and when you're up here you forget this part of you, or vice versa, whatever one I didn't say. When you breathe, you kind of like, and you bring your awareness to your fear state, then that higher part of you, it's almost like parent consciousness or like sober adult consciousness, can come down and be like, honey, that's crazy. We don't need to worry about that right now. You're okay. And over time, it's like the patterning of your brain changes, and then whenever there's wind and the pinwheel goes, those thoughts that you used to default to, and again, probably wouldn't remember when you're feeling good, but those repeat thoughts start to grow over, and whenever you're upset, you're able to more readily say, I'm upset, I'm scared, and you deal with the feelings rather than have the brainstorm. Do you ever slip into the present moment in the same way you might wander off into a daydream, or is it always intentional? That's a great question. Yeah, I actually think that might be the best way to get into the present moment, is to not try. As soon as you start to apply, like, I'm going to be present, what you're saying energetically is, I'm not present. But if you focus on an activity, like, I'm breathing, you're not saying anything about whether you're present or not. You're really just focused on the activity. That's why I like doing art so much, because I forget that I have to try to be or do anything. Do you have any that you like to share? Usually for me, it's always me thinking about something I should be doing instead of things that need to get done. Thank you. Yeah, this should be doing pressure, I think, it really, from what I've seen for myself and clients, it really is a lot of parental dialogue, copy and paste, and it might not necessarily be things they said to you about you, but maybe the way that they interpreted their own life, or the things that they thought to point out conversationally or about other people, or even just kind of like what they had going on inside of them. So, I mean, we're energetic beings first and foremost, and so whether somebody's saying something or not saying something, like, you feel them. And over time, we're pretty much like trained to ignore that and just go off what they say. Oh, they say this. No, like, obviously they're upset. If you want to help your partner or your friends learn how to be present, have them match their two experiences, how they feel and what they express. And that kind of takes them out of the mind to right now. And it can be really scary, depending on what you've been through personally, to do this. Because if your earlier environment, I mean, and the things that I'm talking about now, yes, they would be very true for you if you had kind of like a chaotic or abusive, and not even like physically abusive, let's just say like emotionally inattentive environment. That would be very true for you. But it seems that it's also true for the population at large, just because of the ways that we've been trained to interact. So if you want to help somebody come into themselves, at first it can be really scary at a physiological, like, oh shit, I'm gonna be like rejected from the tribe, and all these things can happen, and the body's like, don't say it. And sometimes that's true for someone, and other people might have the opposite experience of that, where it's like, say more than you mean and yell it. And neither of those choices are conscious. If they were conscious, then they would they would express correctly, no more or no less than what was needed at an information level to like collaborate. And that's coming back to like, if somebody's aware, they do that. If somebody's not doing that, then they're not wholly aware, because being wholly aware includes awareness that it's okay to do it. And when we're looking at like waking up or enlightenment or whatever, it seems to, there's silly terms, but they have their place, and they can be useful in some ways, but it's kind of like that progressive realization of your okayness. Sometimes I daydream to escape the situation I'm in. Yes, and so that's an interesting thing to explore. I would ask what you believe. After surviving my heart attack last year, I'm not always present. My mind wanders a lot. Yeah, I mean, I think daydreaming can be really healthy, visualizing just as much as processing the current situation. I totally agree. Okay, great. I love that dialogue between the two of you. What Michael did was basically put the, that's okay stamp on what you're experiencing, and that is like the master stamp. You put a that's okay stamp on whatever you've got going on emotionally, nervous system wise, anxiousness, depression, whatever. That's a quick way to get present, because you're doing this again, where you're sort of matching what is to what you think should be what is. When you say I shouldn't daydream, I shouldn't feel this, what you're saying is like, that's not okay. And there are all types of ways to come to understand that it's okay, but it's also okay to not know why it's okay and go there anyhow. That's ultimately the end state, and all other guesses as to why it's okay, they're just guesses. And as your understanding, or let's say as your awareness expands and the data points you can consider increase, how you would explain why something is okay changes. So we work really hard to come up with these bills of understanding, here's why it's okay that my mom did that and I'm like this. When if you looked, it'd be well, your mom did that because of this and because of that, and you go the whole way over this paper, and you really can't say. You can't say why anything is. And we can make good guesses, and sometimes that's helpful to a point, but you can get real lost in thinking you're doing something when all you really want to do is put the that's okay stamp. So from what I can tell, that is being in love, when you let what is be what is, and that would be on whatever level is accessible to you. So if I dumped all my crayons on the floor right now, this is probably the most adult example I could give you. Yeah, fuck yeah. Let's say all my crayons go on the floor, and if I'm well trained, I'd be like, okay, cool, I'll pick them up. But let's say that it's earlier in my journey and I default instead to self-criticism and say something like, you're always dropping shit, why aren't you paying attention? If you're starting to implement these practices, it might seem come at that level, why are you being critical, you doing that, be nice to you about your crayon spill. But that's just more criticism on criticism. That's one of the slippiest tracks on, slippiest steps when you're starting to self-develop, your inner dialogue, is to be critical about being critical, when what we're looking for is the that's okay stamp. Thanks for coming in. Nice to see you. Put the that's okay stamp on it. So it's that's okay, I'm throwing a fit about something I know I shouldn't throw a fit about. You just, at whatever level you can accept what's happening, that's perfect. You don't have to take it. We're not looking, and I really was. We're not looking for a perfect response. We're looking for perfect acceptance of what is. And what is what's happening outside, but it's also what's happening inside. And as your awareness of your inner world expands, there are a bunch of things that are happening, and you could say because my dad did that, I do this, and the story really doesn't help. I lived there, you can tell them, but again, we're just looking for that's okay, and ultimately what you want to do is repattern that response, which is feeling okay. Feeling okay is what you're trying to teach your nervous system. That's how you kind of align with the universal energies of I'm God, you're God, it's God, we're cool. It's you open the doors when you aren't denying your divinity. But then what do I do with the feelings that come up after acceptance? you love them, and you do that by sitting down with them. I spent about 30 years of my life not knowing how to have emotions. And so when I learned, I had a lot of energy in my field that needed to get out. When you're not able to be present consistently, it seems like you're afraid to feel stuff. And like, who wouldn't be? It's really uncomfortable. So I found the way that the way I've been able to neutralize as many of my responses as possible is to embrace them by saying like, it's okay, like, it's all right, we know you're upset, you're more upset than you think you should be, like, it's cool. And you just sit down and you feel it. And I know you're on my my other channel, and sometimes I talk there about like, I'll just yell. I'll go under if I'm walking somewhere, I'll stop under a bridge, or if I'm by the water, and I'll just yell. And that had been really important to me in claiming my voice against injustice, where I had been trained to be like, just sip it and deal with it. Now it's like, that really sucked. And it did, And so it does seem like there's a little there is some work or time or something until everything comes to a place of balance. You're more upset than you think you should be. Yeah, it's when I generally write this in whatever I'm writing, but somewhere I try to slip in there that what we're looking for, like the ultimate pattern that that we need to repattern, or like what we're trying to, like what's on top of everything else, is this is self-rejection. I should be other than I am. And I love the Gene Keys material. I talk about that all the time, and I forget which Gene Key it is, but one of them talks about how there's all this guilt and shame around having emotions, but we're human. And depending on when you started to feel like you shouldn't have emotions, determines how many adjustments you've learned to make so that you don't. And a lot of the adjustments that we make are like, don't worry, I won't feel about it. I'll think about it though. And when you think about it, you generally put it on something externally, or you put it on something internally as a limit. A lot of my fear, avoiding emotions, self-doubt comes from experiences in the work setting, trying to be more conscious and genuine in the role of an employee. Yeah, it's, emotions are pretty, I'm pretty new to myself. I'm new to them myself, relatively. And from what I found, when you start to have I guess this is like my theme today, like when you start to have a relationship with them, it changes, and you actually teach the people around you, because again, if they were conscious of what they were doing or conscious of alternatives, then there wouldn't be those kind of dynamics in play. And so when you sort of take on to yourself, like, okay, I'll do it. And if what you're doing is even just attempting to do something with them constructive, it shows other people like, oh, that's an option. I could try that. And maybe it registers or maybe it doesn't. But, it's great that that's something that you're conscious of and you're working on, and it'll ripple out around you in ways you won't even imagine. When we're looking, most people learn how to behave, maybe all of them, through modeling. And what is modeling? Modeling is you just watch people do stuff and then you do it too. That's it. And a lot of what we model has been on television, film and television, and a lot of that is drama. It's drama because it's boring to watch people get along, So we sort of model, that's how you that's modeled to us. This is how you process life. This is what you do with emotions. This is the information that you share. This is what you don't. And we're like, okay, got it, doing it. But it's not really, it's not effective. And that's where it comes back to awareness and consciousness. If you're aware of what you're doing, you would see oh, wow, I'm in a relationship. what's my point of being in the relationship? Well, it's to be intimate with someone. Well, why would I want to, what does that mean? Well, it means I'm close to them. Okay, well, what might that mean? It might mean that they know how I actually think and feel. Okay, well, I'm scared that they might not like it. Okay, well, then why would I, we get stuck at the level of the action. And if you just zoom out a little bit, maybe like take 2 big zooms and say like, well, what's my point here? What am I trying to do? It really opens up a lot. I talk myself out loud every day. I thought it was just me. No. And that's another thing I'll add. I mean, I've been working with people one-on-one for, since 2016 about like the inner stuff, and people think that they're the only ones that are like, I'm the only one that's embarrassed by this. I'm the only one that's insecure about that. I'm the only, no. Like it's pretty common. So it's generally, we think we're different where we think we're messed up, but that's, from what I can tell, there's a lot more of that, and we don't think we're special. Like, where we're actually different is where we're special, but we can't really see it because it's who we are. And when you, again, like, open that door of embracing and of offering people a little grace in what they're doing, and you bring that to yourself, then you can start to see you more, because you're not afraid of, if you find something wrong, like, what does this mean? Like, if you find something wrong at first, like, I was so dramatic in all my workings. When I started to see what I had done wrong, like where I had been acting unconsciously, I was so embarrassed. And it took me a couple years to really like let that shit go. And I still have like vestiges of, oh man, I wouldn't have been able to see that about myself then, because I needed the mask to make me think that I was worthy, or, I was important or whatever. So we like really cling to these masks, and the masks are like the antithesis to connection, the antithesis to achievement. There's so much in this world that's just like cute and ironic. Letting go of the pressure my work was putting on me took so long, but I had to realize my expectations burst theirs, and validating myself. It's not easy though. No, it's not easy. And going back to what I was saying about communication, there is a component like money and communication and love, like that all sits or seems to like sit in the nervous system deeply. It's about survival. And when you have difficulty overcoming or like rewiring some of those patterns, like just be even nicer and sweeter to yourself about it, because it's not like, you're not trying to make it hard. You just have a bunch of years of conditioning personally and collectively that can prohibit some of the like, self-empowerment that seems like it's easy. And for some people it is. It all depends. All right. I think that's all I'm going to do today. Capitalism. Actually, Michael, I just finished, I don't know if you saw on my other channel, but I finished this book, or I'm almost done with this book, called Make Art, Make Money. And it's about Jim Henson. It's not by Jim Henson, but it's about Jim Henson and how he... like this woman just kind of reflects on what she sees as choices he made in incorporating idealism in capitalism. And it was really helpful for me, because I also have that like, fuck the system kind of like just pouring out of me in every which way. But that doesn't really allow me, like that cuts off my ability to affect it, ironically. How do you decide what to put on which channel? On this channel, this is kind of like what I have already like kicked the tires on. On the other channel, that's like hot off the press. That's kind of like, here's what I'm unfolding in myself. And I feel more comfortable on that channel speaking. It's like much more, I guess, like it's a lot more personal, and There's a lot more material about me, and I have the ability to let people in or not in on that channel, so that I know, I essentially know who's there, and so I feel comfortable. It's like I invited you came over and I talked. You have another channel? Yes, Intergalactic Hotline. I need this book, Shay. You should make a group chat with a bunch of people. I love this live stream. Thanks so much. Thanks. I'm going to try to come out more. I got to, like I said, warm up the factory. I literally, I've been, practicing getting visions, and everything's so funny. It goes like, everything's got two sides to it. And the vision I had last night was, it was like, this is a print of Ganesh, which I'm selling. I also have the originals. And this is part of the make money. It was like the idea that I can sell items because I really just want to give the information away. Anyhow, so in my dream, my vision, I was holding this, and then it like disappeared. And then I had another one that was the 𝐵𝑒𝑖𝑒𝑖𝑒 one I printed as well, and it was like here, and what was written across the top was teacher. And then this other one, it was basically like I had to call 911, but it was just a money thing. Anyhow, then I heard the words, what I titled my what I wrote in my story today about what does it mean to be in love. And I was like, all right, fine, I'll say it. Because my ego, my fear is like, who are you to go out and say stuff? What if you go, blah, 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 blah. But whatever, here we are, I'll do my best. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming and participating. I really appreciate your comments and your questions. If you're watching the playback and you have any, feel free to put them in the comments here. I have a bunch of stuff on youtube.com/The Shaylee Show and on IGTV. And like I was just saying, thanks, Peter. Hope you're doing well. And like I was just saying, I've got some different things I'm offering now. Art. I've got my oracle cards, which I really like. I don't know if I have them out right now. Hold on. You can order a deck. They're printing at cost, to be honest, about $1 more than I guess with tax, or income tax. So they're printing at cost. So the booklet that comes with them is, I think, adorable. It's digital though, so you get 24 cards, and then there's an additional card with a QR code that you scan, and it takes you to this kind of like it's a flip book, but it's digital, and then you can work with it there. I really like them. Okay, what is your question before we go? Thanks. This is the mandala dancer. I pull one every day for myself. And they also come with worksheets for you to take notes on what you pull each day and how you're interpreting it, so you can start to see like what you're unfolding and to be more conscious to that process. I'm pretty excited about them. And if anybody wants to fund a bulk print, there are a bunch of little magical shops in New Orleans that I could probably place them at, or if you have a magical shop that you want to sell them at, like, let's talk. Also, if you want prints, this is the 8x11. Like I said, this is the print. I'm pretty happy with how they turned out. This one is 40, and then there are smaller ones that are 5x7 that are 20 or 25. Both are kind of in that range. Okay, I want to wait for the question. MVJ, are you here? Okay, that's not for me, I don't think. Sorry, I was going to ask a question. I'm waiting for that. And if you're still there, great. I'll wait a few more moments. The other thing I've got, the astrology classes. Man, if you aren't looking at your astrology and you're interested in self-development, like, you're missing out. And I can't say enough about how useful that information is. So the courses I have right now, I've got a live class every other Friday for 3 more Fridays, and then I have self-study decks you can buy, And the first class is available. It combines the first 2 live ones, and it's how to look at the North Node, Chiron, and your moon placements. And like, what the fuck, who cares? You care. All of those are basically like, here's what's happening inside you pretty consistently that if you're not aware of will block you. So for example, my North Node, your North Node, South Node line shows you where you're really comfortable and over, like you're too strong here and not that strong here. And the video that is in that deck has a cartoon of a guy with like a really overdeveloped arm and like one really like skinny one. And that's basically what happens. So my South Node, my strong arm, is in the esoteric stuff and, you know, harmonizing with other people and being in toxic relationships and all this stuff. And I really don't like that word either, but for shorthand. And then my North Node is over in my second house in Aries, which is basically like, you need to be like a solid individual that doesn't, like, you need to know who the fuck you are, not move for anything, and be grounded. And that's very uncomfortable and challenging for me. And I might have tried to spend the rest of my life looking with my strong arm and always being out of balance. It's one of the other visuals I have on that deck is a rowboat. So if you're not aware of where you're out of balance, even though you'll know somewhere, but you likely are ignoring it because you don't know what to do instead. It's like rowing with just one arm. You just go in circles. You need both in the water to go somewhere. Are you Pisces? I am Pisces, moon, Pisces, first house. So I have a lot myself. My individual is very Piscean, but my sun sign is Libra. I want an apartment tour. It looks so cute. This is my little sitting area. I put on my book, so I took my painting off the wall so I could see one of my other ones. That's my area. Okay, I guess I know nothing about astrology. I'm a Scorpio. That's about it. There's so much information there. It took me a little bit to get over the idea of astrology kind of seems like the 2 sentences in Cosmo or like the newspaper that's like, you're gonna have cash this month and be open to your soulmate. Astrology is so much more than that. It's like mind-blowing. And so that class that I'm offering, the first class 1 self-study deck has natal chart stuff, and the one I'm working on right now is human design, which is a layer on top of astrology, and that incorporates elements from the I Ching, the chakra system, and the Kabbalah, and it's kind of like, this is how your spot of consciousness, this is how your cosmic dot moves, and that was really helpful for me as well. All right, so I'm going to wrap this up. Looks like the guy who had a question left, or he forgot what it was. Okay, thanks so much again for coming. I'll be out a lot this week working on this.